What's up, everyone? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'll break down what's happening with NIO moving forward and some big news that came out involving it, and why the market's looking very, very interesting right now. Let me just mention that I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button. It not only benefits me, but benefits the entire community as a whole. Anyways, for NIO, we did see this little attempt to rebound in the morning as we came close to about 4.26. Only to get a big rejection, start tipping back down towards this $4 area. I mentioned in my video yesterday, NIO would likely dip towards $4. We're getting very, very close to that target. We did touch it during the pre-market only to bounce back up. But I still think that there is some more downside potential looking at the current setup. So the question now becomes, what's going to happen going into the markets? Why did the market get a big sell-off today? What's going on with the big news that came out? So I'm going to give you guys lots of important answers about this. So the first thing I want to mention is the fact that we got some unemployment numbers today. The unemployment rate was once again above expectations, showing more and more signs that we're getting closer to a potential recession. And other indicators are starting to show that. So it's something that's very important. Unemployment was at 4.3%, well above expectations. And then non-farm payrolls and other payrolls for manufacturing to others were well below expectations. So we're starting to see a big shift in the economy. We're starting to see the labor market contracting more than expected. This is going to be very important for us moving forward. For other things that are worth noting, I also want to mention that for Monday, which is going to be August 5th, 15 minutes after market opening of the S&P Global Composite PMI, and then at 10 o'clock a.m., we also have this ISM services data. That's going to be very important, so we'll see what that leads to. Now, there's some big news coming out involving lots of stuff that's going on around the world. I'm not going to go into the full details, but I just want to say that this is quite negative for the markets. If there is more violence that continues, if we start to see this pretty much as things have been before, it's not going to be too good for the markets. We have to be very careful with this, especially as war is continuing. So be very mindful of this. This is going to be a big factor affecting us. Things are very tense right now involving Israel, Iran, and many other countries. The US is even getting involved. So I just want to make it very clear that we have to be careful with all of this. We'll have to see how things end up progressing from here. But if there is some kind of attack that happens over the weekend or later on, that could lead to a big shift in equities. So be very careful. And I want you guys to be prepared for this just to be safe. We saw the Dow close down more than 600 points. The Nasdaq is entering correction territory after this very, very weak jobs report and fear of a recession. Now, the market's in a very, very critical place. You want to be very careful with the way we're moving. And once again, we're still looking quite weak. On top of this, there's also some news coming out about NIO. NIO started its season 2 for a podcast, for the House of NIO. And they're basically talking about AI and the new developments that are being made. Also talked about Nami, the assistants that NIO has inside of its cars. That can be very, very cool for listening to music and a bunch of different things. So very, very cool stuff in my opinion. I can't wait to see what the future holds with this technology. But for the short term, with everything that's going on around the world and the unemployment data, that still dragged NIO down. It wasn't really a fact to help the share price. Bank of America Securities has given NIO a neutral rating. Looking at other data, the price price ratio is still dipping. This is now below expectations. There's not really a whole lot else that's changing in terms of seasonality, so we'll just have to see how things go. NIO also had about 40 million in volume. That's below average. So the question is, what's going to happen from here? I think that NIO is going to try to base closer to this $4 area, but we are still looking bearish in terms of our trend. We're making lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, continuing to fall. I think that there's a risk of more downside. We could be continuing to dip all the way down into the threes if we lose $4. Today, NIO tried to rebound, was trying to bounce, and the move ended up failing, especially after that big red bar we saw yesterday. So we pumped only to dump. So I'm starting to suspect that this might do something similar on Monday, and there's going to be a risk of us coming back down towards that $4 area. I think we might shuffle here for some bits, and then we'll see if we get a temporary bounce, but there might be a little bit more downside coming before any attempts to bounce. We might see a temporary attempt depending on how the market ends up moving, but this depends on lots of different factors from wars and the data that comes out. So we do look more bearish from a technical standpoint. I do expect us to kind of dip a little bit more on Monday. Then we'll see if we get a little rebound again, and then we'll see if we get a similar rejection as well. But look and see how things end up going because of how the market's looking thus far. For other factors, when it comes to SPY on the 4 hours looking more bearish overall. But we have key support at 528. If we hold 528, there could be a temporary rebound. We could try to get closer to 536. We'll see if we get a rejection or not. If there's a big attack and things remain very bearish for the markets, if we end up losing 528, there's going to be an even bigger drop coming. So be very, very careful at 528. I think that SPY has tested that already, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get on Monday. Generally, when you see the market dip this much, we will try to rebound just a little bit. So there might be an attempt to get back up into the mid 530s, and then we'll see if we get a rejection or not. But that is the most probable move as long as there's not too much bad news. If there's a big attack that happens and SPY ends up losing 528, we'll be dipping all the way down to the 510s pretty quickly, if not 503. So we're looking pretty bearish if we end up losing that. If we hold above that, we could try to rebound temporarily towards 536. But then even if we do test 536, we'll see if we get a rejection or not. The trend is still bearish on SPY. It is possible we try to make like a little rebound move, but then we'll see if you reject or not. So be very mindful of that and be very, very careful. For other factors involving the markets, we also have Nvda. Nvidia kind of has like a nice looking structure here. It formed kind of like a double bottom. It was trying to bounce, getting back up to 108 only to reject. So I think there might be a temporary move to the downside back down to 104 on Monday. So just be mindful of that. Tesla is closed below its 4-hour 200 EMA. If we reclaim 215, this could technically try to bounce. If we fail to do so, this is going to likely continue to sink. And we're barely at support in this 206 to 207 area. We'll have to see if Tesla could hold this or not. If we do hold this, look for a retest of 215. If we fail to do so, this could reject and start tipping lower. And our next target would be this gap down here towards this 198 to 200 area. Technically speaking, we look more bearish on Tesla. It's favoring the downside. May pop and drop lower. We might get closer to 200. It depends on if we could hold above 215 or at least get back up there or not. But we still look more bearish. For the QQQ, we look very bearish. There's no sign of this bouncing quite yet. So I think there might be a retest of 444. If we bounce off 444, we could try to rebound and we could be trying to get back up above 450. We need to close above 450 for there to be like a temporary rebound. If we fail to close above that and we continue to reject, we'll just continue to fall down to the 444 area. For Aapl also has kind of like a head and shoulders like structure, but if you look at today, even after earnings came out, we just popped a little bit only to reject. So Aapl has resistance at 222. If we break that, we will push higher. If we fail to do so, we'll be looking for a dip back down towards 216. We have a nice range on Aapl, but we'll have to watch and see if we hold up. I'm seeing some weakness right here, so it might dip towards 217. We'll see if we bounce or not, but otherwise, we're just kind of range bound for now. But let me just go over a few more. Coinbase was trying to rebound only to reject. So even after earnings, it's still rejected. It still looks pretty bearish. We need to reclaim 208 to 210. If we reclaim that, we could rebound. If we fail to do so, this will continue to dip lower all the way down towards 193. That looks very probable in my opinion. For Amazon, we're looking a little bit more bearish right now. Look at resistance around this 170 area. If we fail at 168, we'll be dipping all the way down towards 165. We are favoring the downside, so it looks a little bit more bearish to me. However, it depends on if we could end up holding above 170. To me, it looks like it's going to dip a little bit lower. We had a big red day, and it's not looking that great. So I favor a little bit of consolidation, maybe a little bit more downside. For Meta, we're looking a little bit weaker. We closed below 488, which is not, or we closed at 488, but we're below it in the after hours, which is not the best of signs. We have support at 482. I think we might be testing 482. We'll see if we bounce or not off this. If we lose that, then expect a bigger drop all the way down to the 470s. Watch 482 very carefully. We might test and we'll see if we bounce or not. Microsoft is just trading sideways. We have support currently around this 404 area. Resistance at about 410. We've been shuffling, but there is a risk of downside if we fail to hold that support. And then Google's on a big downtrend right now. We ended up rejecting off our resistance. And this chart's looking more bearish for now as we're making lower highs and lower lows. Now, one thing that could be happening is we could be attempting to form a double bottom, but there's no sign of a bounce. That's the biggest issue. So we have 168 as support. If we lose this, watch 166. If that breaks, we'll be looking for a bigger drop all the way down towards the 164s. If we hold this and try to rebound, we'll be looking at 170. If that breaks, we could try to bounce. Otherwise, we look more bearish. So this chart's favoring downside. 166 is looking more favorable. So we'll just have to see how things end up moving. So watch for that very, very carefully. Anyways, that's pretty much it, at least for how things are moving. Looking at GameStop, we ended up hitting the 20 area. We could dip a little bit lower towards 20 flat. We're still looking bearish. There's no sign of a bounce quite yet. So watch 20, see if that holds. We might dip a little bit more, and then we'll see what kind of reaction we get. On AMC, AMC is approaching support currently at 4.92. We might dip a little bit more to test that, in my opinion. And we'll see if we bounce or not, but we're still looking kind of weak. Watch 4.92 if that breaks. We're dipping all the way down to the 4.7s. If not, it is what it is, but just know we're looking quite bearish. The VIX is on fire. It's up 25%. It got a nice little push. We'll see if the VIX continues this uptrend. It's still on an uptrend, so just be mindful of that. And just be very careful with the way things are moving. So we'll wait and see how things end up going depending on the news, but just know that many stocks out there are still looking kind of bearish. For NIO, we might dip a little bit more, but then we'll see if we hold support at this $4 area. We'll see if we get a bounce or not. I do think it's going to dip a little bit towards 4, if not a little bit lower, then it might try to rebound just temporarily because that's where we have some key supports. And then there still could be a risk of a rug pull after that. Look for a dip and a bounce, then see if NIO gets that rug pull. Anyways, that's it for my video. Thank you all so much for listening, and peace out.